He looked like any other small-town kid. But behind those blue eyes lay a hunger no one saw coming. This is the story of the country boy who hunted more than wildlife. And the night a single traffic stop exposed the monster.
Madness and Macabre.
Fort St. James is a place built on routine and familiarity. Fish fries at the lake, kids skating until the street lights flicker on, neighbors waving across driveways they've shared for decades, and Cody. Cody was the kind of kid who blended right into that landscape. Born in 1990, he grew up hunting grouse with his dad and fishing with his grandfather quiet. Shy. A good kid, people said. Nothing strange, nothing alarming. But sometimes the surface lies. As Cody moved into his teenage years, the shift didn't start in the open. It began online. On a Canadian teen platform called Nexopia. There he became One Country Boy, a harmless name on the surface. But behind it, Cody discovered something intoxicating. Attention, power, and access to the vulnerable. And underneath the wholesome country boy image, something darker began to grow. When Cody moved to Prince George in 2009, it should have been a fresh start. A new job, new roommates, a new chapter. Instead, it became the beginning of a spiral. He started using cocaine heavily. He drifted into the late-night shadows of the city. The alleys behind strip malls, the transient corners, the areas where people struggle, survive, and sometimes disappear. By 19, Cody was living two lives. By day, a quiet kid from a good family. By night, tangled in addiction, drifting among vulnerable women, chasing an edge he couldn't seem to find. And then, the disappearances began. Northern British Columbia has a way of hiding things. Sound, footsteps, even violence. The land just swallows it. And on October 13th, 2009, it swallowed a secret so brutal, even seasoned investigators felt their stomachs twist when they reached the scene. A gravel pit, empty, cold, silent, except for the wind brushing across the frost. And lying there in the dirt was Stacey Stuchenko, 35 years old, a mother of 6, someone who struggled, yes, but someone who never stopped loving, never stopped trying, never stopped calling her children whenever she could. She didn't die peacefully. The violence was explosive, personal, unrestrained. It was the kind of scene that doesn't come from a moment of panic, but from someone who was already unraveling. No tire tracks, no witnesses, no scatter of footprints leading away. Just a body left at the edge of the forest, and a killer slipping back into the dark like he'd never been there at all. At first, Jill was marked down as another tragic loss in a region already haunted by disappearances, addiction, and the long shadow of the Highway of Tears, a lone storm in a cold northern night. But this wasn't a storm. It was the first crack in the ice, the first ripple before the water turns dark. And somewhere in Prince George, a young man was already moving on with his life, unnoticed, untouched, unseen, carrying the weight of what he'd done like it was nothing at all. Winter came early to Prince George that year. It brought cold and something else. Fear. On September 10th, 2010, almost a year after Jill's murder, Cynthia Frances Mast disappeared, 35. Loved fiercely by her friends. Struggling, yes, but trying, always trying. For weeks, her absence spread through support workers, shelters, and street outreach teams. Like a quiet alarm, they searched, asked around, put up pictures. But the nights kept passing, and Cynthia never came home. 1 month later, a search team found her body in a wooded area near L.C. Gun Park. What they saw matched Jill's fate almost exactly. The same violence, the same rage, the same sense that the killer stopped caring whether the forest hid his secrets or showcased them. 2 women gone, 2 scenes echoing each other. Investigators noticed the similarities, but without a suspect, the pattern felt like smoke visible, but impossible to hold. And then, another woman vanished. While the city searched for answers, another story was beginning. Her name was Lauren Dawn Leslie, 15 years old, artistic, soft-spoken, a girl who drew to make sense of her world. Legally blind in one eye, often misunderstood because of it. Online, she found comfort, friendship, someone who listened, someone who called himself One Country Boy. Cody made her feel seen, made her feel important, made her feel safe. And on the night of November 27th, 2010, Lauren told a friend she was going for a drive. Just a drive. She walked out into the cold, unaware that she had just stepped into a nightmare crafted by someone who hid behind a gentle smile and an innocent screen name. She didn't know she was being hunted. The night Lauren vanished was bone cold, the kind of cold that makes sound brittle and the air feel sharp. Around 9:45 p.m., Conservation Officer Aaron Keeler spotted a black pickup speeding down a remote logging road outside Vanderhoof. Trucks use those roads all the time, but something about this one was wrong. It wasn't driving normally. It was swerving, moving too quickly, and completely alone in the dead of night. Keeler activated his emergency lights, followed the vehicle, and eventually pulled it over. Behind the wheel sat a 20-year-old young man who appeared calm, polite, and just slightly nervous. His name was Cody Alan Legebokoff. He told the officer he was just hunting, but Keeler noticed details that didn't match that story. Cody had no gun, no license, no hunting gear of any kind. His explanation came too quickly, then changed, and then changed again. As the officer looked closer, something else caught his eye. Cody's boots. The snow around them should have been dry, but the boots were wet, sticky, and stained red. It was blood, fresh blood. Inside the truck, officers found tools smeared with it. They found a purse. They found a girl's ID. The name on the card was Lauren Dawn Leslie. Backup arrived, and officers began following the fresh tire tracks leading away from the truck and into the dark forest. Their flashlights stretched thin beams of light across the snow as they moved deeper between the trees. And there, under the tall, silent pines, they found her. Lauren lay in the snow, still, silent, and already gone. The forest around them felt as if it was holding its breath. And in that moment, Cody's mask finally shattered. After Cody's arrest, investigators searched his basement suite, a small apartment that looked ordinary at first glance. Scuffed furniture, cluttered counters, and the kind of mess you'd expect from a young man living on his own. But the deeper they looked, the more the illusion fell apart. In the bathroom, luminol revealed small droplets of blood invisible to the naked eye. Those droplets belonged to Natasha Montgomery, the woman whose body had never been found. Investigators then examined Cody's clothing, discovering more traces of DNA from Jill Stuchenko, from Cynthia Mars, and from Natasha again. They found tools smeared with blood and materials that tied directly back to the victims. The evidence was overwhelming. Every corner of that apartment held pieces of the truth Cody insisted wasn't his. No matter how carefully he tried to hide what he'd done, the forensic trail left behind told the real story. One he could never explain away. When Cody sat down in the interrogation room, he behaved nothing like a man facing 4 murder charges. He was calm, almost relaxed, leaning back in his chair as if the entire situation was a misunderstanding. He claimed he wasn't responsible for any of the deaths. He said he had simply been present, or that mysterious friends, people he referred to as X, Y, and Z, were the real killers. But every name he gave was fake. Every detail fell apart under questioning. He couldn't provide addresses, phone numbers, or even basic descriptions that made sense. Investigators listened as he contradicted himself repeatedly, spinning stories that collapsed the moment they were spoken. Cody was desperate to distance himself from the violence, but the DNA told a different story. Every time he tried to move the blame onto someone else, the physical evidence dragged it back to him. The calm young man sitting in that chair was running out of places to hide, and he knew it. In June 2014, Cody Legebokoff's trial began in Prince George. The courtroom filled quickly, not because people expected shocking new revelations, but because it was still hard for many to believe the accused was someone they might have passed on the street without a second thought. Cody pleaded not guilty to all 4 murders. His defense repeated the same claims he had made in interrogation, that unnamed accomplices were responsible and that he was merely a bystander at the scenes. But the prosecution laid out the evidence clearly and methodically. Forensic experts testified about the DNA found on his clothing and tools. Investigators explained the trail of evidence leading from his truck to the logging road to his apartment. Pathologists described the brutality inflicted on each victim. Every piece of the case aligned with one conclusion: Cody was the killer. After hearing weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. On September 11th, 2014, they returned with a verdict. Guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder, Cody showed no emotion as the words were read. 5 days later, he received a sentence of life in prison, with no chance of parole for 25 years. The impact of Cody's crimes didn't end with his conviction. For the families of Jill Stuchenko, Cynthia Mars, Natasha Montgomery, and Lauren Leslie, the loss is permanent. Each woman had hopes, dreams, and people who loved them deeply. They were not defined by their struggles, and they were not defined by their deaths. Their absence left wounds in the community that will never fully heal. For Lauren's family, the smallest daughter was taken. For Natasha's, the uncertainty of never recovering her body adds a weight few can imagine. For Jill and Cynthia, their children and loved ones still feel the void left behind. Cody continues to insist he didn't act alone, but no evidence has ever supported that claim. Every indication points to a lone offender, a young man who hid unimaginable violence behind an ordinary appearance. The files are closed, for now, but history remembers those who embraced chaos and the secrets they left behind. Thank you for joining us in Madness and Macabre, where madness meets the Macabre, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next dark story is just around the corner. Stay safe out there